Today we're going to talk about optimizing your tennis equipment. So present it as an optimization problem. The first step is going to be to define the problem. Second step would be to state your assumptions / limit your variables. Number 3 would be to prepare to solve. 4 would be solve the problem, and 5 would be adjustments at the end. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, this is Andy from Tennis with Andy, and welcome to today's episode. So today, the title is going to be Optimizing Your Tennis Equipment, and we're going to present this in 5 simple steps. So the first step would be to state your problem, right? And this could be as simple as I want the tennis setup, the racket setup that would let me win the most matches possible. Or it could be like, I want something that will give me lots of fun. Or it could be that I want my racket setup to really improve my forehand and my serve. And I don't really care about the other aspects. So that's number 1, and that's crucial. And I say this because for each player it's different. Like for me, I pride myself in I want to have a nice, well-rounded game. So I want something that's going to my forehand is generally my stronger shot, but I want something that's gonna be good for my forehand, but it will improve my backhand. So I should have a nice, well-rounded game from the baseline, and then also give me the opportunity to come to the net and put things away. So that's sort of my ideal spec. Now this is right here is my Pro Steph 85. It's a racket that I absolutely love and one that I've used for a while. It's not my current racket of choice, but it's one that I always keep in my racket bag. Now with this racket, no matter what, when I pick this up, all I want to do is attack. I want to hit big serves, big forehands, and come to net and finish it off. So given my sort of my requirements, this is not sort of in my spec range, because I can't stay at the baseline and rally, because for this I just want to come to the net. Which is not a bad thing, but again, that's not what I'm trying to optimize here. Now, a different scenario, let's say that you are Jack Sock, right? And again, I say this is very personal to each player, right? Jack Sock has probably one of the best, if not the best, forehand on the ATP Tour. And if I were him, and if I were looking for a new tennis racket or tennis setup, I'd want something that would even improve my forehand even more, and maybe give me a little bit more pop on the serve as well. Not necessarily caring about the backhand, because for him, if he's playing well, he's not hitting backhands, he's just ripping forehands. So that's the first step. So step number 2 is to limit your variables. And there are a whole lot of things to look at. If you're trying to optimize your tennis, you could look at all the different strokes. You have your serve, your forehand, your backhand, lob, drop shot, volley, just to name a few, slice as well. And then with each one of those, you can sort of create a sub-parameter, which is power for each stroke, your spin, the comfort level that you have when you hit the ball, your touch, your feel. Touch and feel could be similar, but people often think about them as different. So can you imagine, so with those 6 different strokes, we have these 5 different sub-parameters. So that's 30 or so variables. And that's really, unless you're a supercomputer, right, it's not possible to optimize each thing, right? So you limit the things that you're looking at. And for my sake, let's say I'm going to just focus on my forehand, my backhand, and volley. Right, and I want to be able to hit those with power and spin. So that's how I've limited my steps that I'm looking at, and really focusing on those 2. And then, so those are the sort of what I say the parameters that we're looking to optimize. Now, there are different levers that we can pull. So we have your rackets, right? So you have different sorts of rackets, all different rackets in terms of head size, your stiffness, the brand that makes it. Then you have strings, a multitude of strings. You have different gauges for strings, different tensions. You can string something different in the poly versus or in the main versus in the cross. Then you have your grip, and this is one which I feel like is very underrated, right? So first of all, like the size of the grip, right? If for me, like if the grip is too big, then what's happened is that it limits my ability to generate topspin. If it's too small, then I'm generating a good whip, but I feel like sometimes I lose the stability that I have on volleys, right? And some people say that you can always add, like you buy a racket too small, you can always add over grips or a shrink sleeve to increase the size. But what that does as well is if you add in too many over grips, it makes you lose the feel of the bevels. And then as well, you are making your racket a lot more headlights, which if you're very sensitive in terms of balance of your racket, might not be the best thing. So in general, I want to get something that's around the size that I'd want, maybe a little bit smaller, and add an overgrip or two. So next is the type of the grip. So you have the replacement grips. You have your leather grips. You have your synthetic grips. You have different. Not all leather is created equal. You have Wilson, which is quite thin. You have others like Vocal or Gamma, which are thicker leather grips. So leather generally adds a little bit of weight, and then also is firmer, so you get more feel for the bevels. Right. So these are a lot of things to look at, and in general, like if I'm trying to solve and see what's the racket that I want to limit the variables, limit the things, the levers that I can pull. So I would typically say like my strings, I'm going to fix my strings. So I'm going to use Luxilon 4G, which is one of my strings of choice at 52 pounds about, and that's what I would use for testing my new racket or my new proposed racket. I'll get the grip probably in the stock grip. Maybe ideally, like I like leather, so if possible, I'll do leather with one overgrip, for example. I'm not going to add any weight initially. I just want to leave it as stock and see and guess how it plays. So from this, I've limited my variables, and I know the sort of typical rackets that I like, which are players' frames, maybe anywhere between 90 to 98 square inches. So from there, I would go to Tennis Warehouse or another like place to demo, maybe like 3 or 4 rackets. So I've limited the variables. Next is setting up the system to solve, right? To solve your problem. And this is key here because you have to have appropriate ways to solve. Like for me, what I would want to do is I want my game to be able to transcend. I guess I want my average game to be able to play well against the average player that I play against. And so for example, like if I'm only playing against my friend Vlad, who hits one of the heaviest balls that I've seen, like really heavy power and spin, then I'm going to probably pick a club, basically a club of a tennis racket, something that's really heavy and enables me to kind of just block back his shots, just because I know they already come with a lot of pace and spin, right? But trying to optimize my tennis versus him is not the right thing to do, right? I need to optimize it versus the sort of middle-of-the-road player that I normally play against. Maybe middle of the road is not the correct term. I'd say that the average player that I normally play against. And it's one where like I'm a tennis buff, so if you look historically, like if you look at Roddick versus Federer, right? So Roddick had one of the best games. He was number 2 in the world, and I think a mistake that he could have made is if he said that, okay, we have Federer who's been beating me all the time. Let me just try and change my game completely just to try and beat Federer. He may have beaten Federer maybe a couple more times, but like he was already good enough to be number 2, and so I think adjustments would be good, but not necessarily change his entire game plan. Right. So for the average rec player, right? So I say like hit with like your average opponents that you play against, right? Don't try and optimize for a pusher or optimize for a heavy topspin pace person. Just optimize for the average level of play that you play against. And then like in terms of conditions, like pick what are the conditions that you want to do. So I like to make sure that my racket setup would work for both indoors and outdoors. So in a 2-week test period, I tested for indoors and outdoors. Right. So once I've done that, I set up my problem. Step number 4 is to solve, and that's basically I take 3 rackets, play test them for about 2 weeks, and then at the end, hopefully get to a solution. So now that I've sort of arrived at what I like, next thing that I would do is sort of the post-market sort of adjustment. So step number 5. And this would be, I usually like to leave 1 or 2 levers for me to adjust. So either the string, actually the string tension, or the amounts of weight that I add in particular places. So for me, for my current state, I'm pretty set on string tension, right? And right now, I'm just trying to figure out what is the best weight to use. And so I've been playing around with my weight setup, adding a little bit of lead here and there. If it goes well, then I keep it. If not, then I take it off and adjust. Oftentimes, pro players, they're pretty much stuck with the weight, but then they adjust the tension of their strings, depends on the condition, depends on the opponent they're playing against. In the off season, you find that they do mess around with the weights as well. Like Nadal has been known to increase the amount of weight he adds at 12 in the early 2010s because he was trying to hit a bit heavier. So that's how I would approach the problem. And in terms of racket reviews and string reviews, I would definitely say reach out to or check out Tennis Nerd's channel. He does a fantastic job, probably the best one on YouTube in terms of racket and strings. So really check him out. He'll be able to dive into the technology a bit more. And then in terms of commercial retailers, I'm a big fan of Tennis Warehouse. The reviews are good, and I think even more so, I'm really a fan of the community that they set up with Talk Tennis. So if you have any questions about rackets, equipment, I really like going to Talk Tennis and reading through the forums, and you'd take the good out of it and use it to help improve your selection. So again, thank you. This was rapid fire, but it's just something that I wanted to get across in a video, and I hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk later.